There comes a time when you have to stop asking for another sign, another confirmation, another word. There comes a point when God is not going to send more clarity, because what you really need is courage, not clarity. You've been waiting for the perfect moment, for the full picture, for the green light to shine from heaven. But here's the truth. You don't need to see it to trust it. God never promised us understanding. He promised us peace. He didn't say you'd know every step. He said, trust me with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And if you're still waiting for the stars to align before you move, you might be missing what God is already doing in your life right now. Some of us are stuck in waiting mode because we've confused trusting God with being passive. But faith is not passive, it's active. Faith walks. Faith moves. Faith steps even when the floor looks shaky. Some of the most powerful moves of God in your life will only happen after you step out. That miracle you're waiting for, it's on the other side of motion, not meditation. You've been praying for doors to open. But God is saying, walk toward it even if it's still closed. He wants to see if you trust Him enough to knock. Some of us want the walls to fall like Jericho, but we haven't marched once yet. Don't just sit there in your anxiety. Move in faith. Stop saying, I'm waiting on God, when God is actually waiting on you. He already gave you the word. He already gave you the strength. He already placed the dream in your spirit. Now it's time to act. Now it's time to start trusting that if He called you, He will carry you. Trust isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And trusting God means choosing obedience even when you're still afraid. It means standing firm even when the enemy whispers doubt in your ear. It means knowing that God's plan is still good, even when your situation doesn't look good. You may not see the whole staircase, but faith takes the first step. You may not understand why it's taking so long, but trust believes God is never late. He's just setting the stage. So stop waiting for all the pieces to fall into place. Trust the one who holds the whole puzzle. Start trusting today. Step into what God already called you to do. Stop waiting and watch Him move. Faith doesn't wait for clarity. It walks in obedience. Sometimes we think faith means waiting until everything makes sense, until all the puzzle pieces fit neatly together, until we feel 100% ready. But that's not how real faith works. Real faith is not the absence of questions. It's the presence of obedience in the middle of uncertainty. Faith doesn't demand full instructions from God. It doesn't say, God, tell me the whole story first. No, faith says, yes, Lord, even when there's no map, even when there's no explanation, even when it feels risky and uncomfortable. The truth is, many of us are addicted to clarity. We want God to show us every turn before we even buckle our seatbelt. We want a GPS route from heaven before we take the first step. But God doesn't operate like that. He doesn't give us a spotlight. He gives us a lamp to our feet. That means you only see one step at a time. He doesn't reveal the whole path, because the walk of faith is a relationship, not a roadmap. If He showed you everything now, you wouldn't need to lean on Him tomorrow. And that's the point. God wants your trust more than your comfort. He's not in the business of giving you step-by-step certainty. He's shaping your character, not just managing your calendar. He's developing your ability to obey when it's dark, not just your ability to shout when it's bright. Clarity is a comfort, but obedience is a calling. And the difference between the two is where faith lies. If you're always chasing clarity, you'll be paralyzed by the unknown. But if you're anchored in obedience, you'll move even in the middle of mystery. Abraham didn't get clarity when God said, go to the land I will show you. He just got the word go. And he went. No destination, no details, just direction. He obeyed, and God unfolded the story along the way. That's what obedience does. It opens doors that waiting can't. It unlocks favor you didn't see coming. You're not going to see the see part before you step into it. You're going to have to step with wet feet before the waters move. Some of us are stuck, not because God hasn't spoken, but because we haven't moved. We're praying for clarity, but God already gave the command. We're asking, what's next? But we haven't even started what's now. Obedience is now, not tomorrow, not when it's easier, not when it's safer now. Because the longer you delay your obedience, the more you dilute your faith. And delayed obedience is often just disguised disobedience. There is something powerful about obeying God in the dark, when you can't see how it's going to work out. when you don't feel like you're qualified, when you're unsure how the bills will be paid, but you trust him anyway. That kind of obedience builds a different kind of faith, battle-tested, storm-proven, devil-defeating faith. The kind that moves mountains not because it understands everything, but because it believes God is in everything. It's easy to trust God when it's all making sense, when everything's falling into place, when you're in control. But faith is built when you keep walking, even when you're confused, even when the doors aren't opening, even when it hurts. Obedience in the dark is proof that you're not following your own vision, you're following God's voice. And sometimes his voice is all you have. But friend, that voice is more than enough. So if you're waiting on clarity before you move, let me challenge you. What if God is waiting on your obedience before he gives you clarity? What if the answers you seek are hidden in your next step? What if your breakthrough is on the other side of one bold decision to trust him, not with your understanding, but with your obedience? God is not waiting to give you more signs. He's waiting for you to trust. We often think we need another sign, one more confirmation, a fresh word. We pray, God, show me if this is really you, as if the voice that whispered to our soul last week suddenly lost its authority. But here's the truth. God is not playing hide and seek with your future. If he already spoke it, why are you still asking for proof? What you need is not more evidence. What you need is to trust what he already told you. We serve a God who speaks once, and it stands forever. If he said move, he meant it the first time. And here's the challenge. Many of us have heard from God, but we're too scared to obey. So we start stalling. Asking for another sign becomes our spiritual excuse for staying where it's safe. But faith isn't about having perfect clarity. It's about having confident trust. It's believing that if God spoke it, it will come to pass even when circumstances scream the opposite. Remember Gideon? He asked for a sign twice. God gave him the fleece, the dew, the dry ground. But then what? God reduced his army from 32,000 to 300 because God was teaching him you don't win battles with signs, you win them with surrender. You don't defeat fear by waiting for another miracle. You defeat fear by moving when God says move, even if it looks impossible. Some of us are addicted to spiritual goosebumps. We want the burning bush, the angelic choir, the thunder from heaven. But God usually doesn't speak in noise. He speaks in a whisper. And if you're always waiting for a dramatic confirmation, you might miss the subtle nudge of his spirit, that quiet conviction, that small prompting in your soul. That's the sign. That's the voice. Trust it. Why do we hesitate? Because we want control. We want certainty. But that's not how God works. He's not trying to keep you comfortable. He's trying to make you courageous. He doesn't need to prove himself to you. He already did that on the cross. What he's asking for now is your trust, not your approval. He doesn't need your permission. He wants your participation. Here's what trusting God really means. It means moving even when you feel fear. It means showing up even when you're unsure. It means saying yes when everything in you wants to say maybe. God doesn't need to show you another sign. He wants to see if you'll walk with him on the strength of the last one. Can you do that? Can you move without needing another miracle? Every time you hesitate for a sign, you delay your growth. You stay stuck in indecision. And indecision robs you of momentum. God is already working, but he's waiting on your response. The breakthrough is not in the fleece. It's in your faith. It's in saying, God, I don't need another sign. I trust you based on who you are. Because at some point you have to stop looking for signs and start listening to the voice behind the sign. At some point, you've got to stop questioning whether God meant what he said and start walking like you believe it. He's not waiting to convince you. He's waiting for you to trust him completely, wholeheartedly, without hesitation. Trust means action, not just belief. It's easy to say you trust God. It sounds good. It looks spiritual. It even feels comforting in the moment. But trust isn't just something you say. It's something you do. Real trust shows up in your actions. It shapes your decisions. It drives your steps. You can say you believe all day long, but until your life starts moving in the direction of that belief, it's not trust, it's theory. There's a big difference between believing in your heart and stepping with your feet. One is internal, the other is visible. One feels safe, the other feels vulnerable. Trust always calls for movement. You can't stay where you are and trust God at the same time. Think of Peter in the boat. He believed Jesus was the Son of God, but trust didn't show up until he stepped out on the water. And that's where transformation begins. Sometimes we try to separate trust from obedience, but you can't have one without the other. Trust that doesn't lead to action is just intellectual agreement, not spiritual dependence. Faith without works is dead, and so is trust without obedience. If you really trust him, your life will reflect it. In your choices, your relationships, your giving, your risk, your surrender. You can't say you trust God with your future and keep holding on to your own plans. You can't say you trust God with your finances and never sow in faith. You can't say you trust God with your healing and not take the step he's asking you to take. Trust means action, even when it costs you. Especially when it's uncomfortable. That's when trust is real. Let's be honest. Many of us trust God in theory, but trust ourselves in practice. We say he's in control, but we keep trying to manage everything. We say he's our provider, but we still hoard out of fear. We say he's our healer, but we let anxiety speak louder than his promises. Why? Because it's easier to believe than to act. But trust isn't tested in your comfort zone. It's tested in your movement. Trust makes you take the job that doesn't make sense on paper. Trust pushes you to forgive the person who hurt you. Trust leads you to let go of the relationship that's pulling you away from your purpose. Trust wakes you up early to pray when no one's watching. Trust isn't glamorous. It's often messy, scary, and inconvenient. But it's where God meets you with power and provision. When you trust, your life becomes a living yes to God, not just once, but every day, every step, every sacrifice. And that kind of trust will take you places belief alone never could. Because it's not the belief that moves the mountain. It's the step of faith based on that belief. And when you move, God moves. When you act, God shows up. Not before, but as you go. So ask yourself, where in your life have you been believing but not acting? What area are you still talking about instead of stepping into? That's where trust needs to rise. Not just in words, but in motion, in courage, in obedience. Because trust is more than a feeling. It's a forward step. We love to say, I'm just waiting on God. And sometimes that's true. But other times, if we're being honest, we're not really waiting on God. We're avoiding what he already told us to do. We've dressed our fear up as patience. We've taken our delay and disguised it as discernment. But deep down, it's not patience. It's procrastination wrapped in spiritual language. God is a God of timing, yes, but he's also a God of movement. There's a time to wait and a time to act, a time to be still and a time to step. And if you're always in waiting mode, always circling the same decision, always second, guessing what God already confirmed, you might not be waiting on God. You might be waiting away from him. Some of us are waiting for conditions to be perfect before we obey. But if you look throughout Scripture, God rarely gave perfect conditions. David didn't wait until he was fully grown to fight Goliath. Noah didn't wait until it rained to build the ark. Esther didn't wait until she was fearless to go before the king. And Jesus didn't wait until everyone understood him before he went to the cross. Delayed obedience in moments of divine instruction is still disobedience. There's a false sense of safety in waiting. We convince ourselves that one day we'll obey. One day we'll start. One day we'll speak up, launch it, leave it, forgive them, try again. But one day easily becomes no day when fear is in the driver's seat. What we think is wisdom is often hesitation. And hesitation is the enemy of momentum. Every day you wait past the moment God said go is a day, you drift farther from what he's trying to do in you. And the dangerous part is we can actually become spiritually numb in our waiting. We normalize the delay. We become comfortable in the in-between. And before long, we don't even hear God's voice as clearly. Not because he's silent, but because our disobedience has drowned out our sensitivity. The longer we stay in a place God has called us out of, the harder it becomes to move when he speaks again. Remember Jonah? He didn't delay because he didn't hear God. He delayed because he didn't want to obey. And where did that get him? In a storm, in the belly of a fish. But it was never about punishment. It was about redirection. God wanted his obedience, not his comfort. And that's true for you too. He's more interested in your surrender than your schedule. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop praying and start moving. Not because prayer isn't powerful, but because prayer without action can become an excuse. Don't just talk to God about it. Do what he told you. Move in the direction of his voice. Step into the flow of his favor. He's not looking for the perfect person. He's looking for a willing heart and a quick yes. So if you know what he said, why are you still waiting? What more do you need? The longer you delay, the more you disconnect from the momentum he wants to build in your life. This isn't a season to stall. This is a season to move boldly, trusting that God will meet you in motion, not hesitation. One of the biggest lies the enemy wants you to believe is that you need to have it all figured out before you begin. That until you see the entire picture, you're not ready. But if you wait until everything makes sense, you'll stay stuck in the same place your whole life. Faith isn't about having the whole plan. It's about trusting the one who holds the plan. If God gave you the full map, you'd stop relying on him. That's why he only shows you one step at a time. When God called Abraham, he didn't give him a destination. He gave him a direction. Go to the land I will show you. What kind of direction is that? One without a GPS, one without a timeline, one without a guarantee of how things would turn out. But Abraham obeyed. He moved before he had the full picture. That's what faith looks like. It walks forward in trust, not in certainty. God often hides the next step until you take the current one. Why? Because he wants to grow your dependence, not your comfort. The full plan isn't withheld from you to punish you. It's withheld to protect your trust. If you knew the obstacles, you might retreat. If you saw the battle, you might back out. If you knew how hard it would be, you might never go. But God doesn't want you focused on the mountain. He wants you focused on the moment. And the moment he's asking for is your obedience right now. Just the next step. That's all he's requiring of you. Not the next 5 years, not the perfect execution, not the guarantee of success, just the next yes. Can you take a step without knowing where it leads? Can you walk with blind trust, knowing that God is not blind and he sees everything ahead of you? The fear of the unknown is powerful, but it's not more powerful than the one who knows the unknown. You don't need a full explanation when you have a full relationship with the one who wrote your story. So stop asking, but what if it doesn't work? And start saying, even if I don't see the whole thing, I'll move because God is with me. So many people never start because they think they're unqualified, unprepared, or too late. But your step doesn't require perfection. It requires faith. God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And you won't see his provision until you begin walking toward the promise. The miracle isn't waiting at the starting line. It's waiting down the road where your trust leads you. You're not responsible for the results. You're responsible for the response, the yes, the step, the motion. Trust isn't proven in your understanding. It's proven in your movement. That's where things begin to shift. When you take that job, make that call, submit that application, start that ministry, leave that toxic habit, even though you don't know what's coming next. God's plan unfolds one step at a time. That's how he builds trust in you. That's how he reveals his faithfulness. So stop waiting